Brilliant. Thank you so much, Alistair. Farangiz and I are going to speak a little bit about a project that both Swansea and Hedayah have been doing, engaged in for about a year with RUSI as well. It all started last summer at the Terrorism and Social Media Conference, who have a sandpit event, and the 5 of us got together and thought, you know, what are the kind of pressing issues if you had a little bit of research money to try and think about, how could we start to address that? And sorry, just a little bit of a shout out. There's about 10 more days to put in an abstract for the 2024 TASM, so my boss can kind of rest easy to know that I've plugged it, but highly recommended as a conference. One of the things that we all decided was of pressing interest was the idea of short form video, and particularly thinking about it from kind of a CVE perspective. I'm sure it won't have escaped the attention of anyone in the room that this has very quickly become one of the kind of biggest media in the world. TikTok emerges in about 2016, and it very quickly becomes kind of one of the largest and kind of most popular platforms. Hits about 1 billion users in 2021, monthly users that is, which is, you know, very impressive metrics. And then it completely changes the landscape of social media with, you know, a range of other platforms. You know, Instagram's got Reels, and Facebook's got short videos, and YouTube's got Shorts, and basically at this point they're doing a huge amount of social media traffic. And again, as I'm sure will be no news to anyone, this presents a space for extremists to exploit. And there's been some really interesting research looking at that side of it, looking at how it's particularly in the context of white supremacists and the far right, although it's certainly easy to find jihadists and other kinds of extremist content on there as well. So I think that's kind of our starting space. This has become one of the most popular media in the world, and extremists are starting to exploit it. I think one of the other important things as well to note is that content removal, simply just getting rid of the content we don't like, is always going to be inherently limited. We all know this. It is going to always be a very important part of how we tackle this, but it is never going to fully answer the question and address it properly. So that presents the potential for counter-speech, which is really what we wanted to do. We were well aware that there were lots of people in this space that were kind of organically creating projects that were seeking to challenge extreme narratives. So some examples, kind of a TikTok campaign called Stop Asian Hate, which was kind of set around to challenging racism, and the quite nicely named JewTok, which was kind of set about trying to challenge anti-Semitism. So we knew that there were people out there in this kind of space doing it already. So that leads us to what we wanted to do. So one of the most, I'm only using it to mess around with anyway. So one of the important things to note is that there are people in this space trying to engage with this kind of content, but the general demographics are pretty young. It's a video format that is generally used by teenagers and young 20-somethings, and therefore it's possible that there's people that have grown these pretty large organic audiences, and they care deeply about these kind of pro-social issues, but they might not have very much actual experience dealing in the kind of CVE space. And as a result, we thought that there would be some sort of value in trying to find a way to get the messages that the mistakes that we've all been making for the last 10 or 15 years in this space, and try and get them in kind of a set of different documents to try and communicate that, to try and strengthen the kind of messages that they were making. It's also worth noting that almost all of these tech companies that are engaging with these kind of short-form videos have their own schemes to reward creators. This is sometimes done financially. This is sometimes done with kind of algorithmic amplification of these kinds of things. But there's a lot of different space, either on TikTok or YouTube, for kind of tech companies rewarding creators that are doing this kind of thing. So that really is our starting point. So with that, we wanted to create 2 documents. One was a very short digestible piece, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, which is really aimed at using kind of very simple non-technical language to speak directly to creators. But also we wanted to underlie that and be evidence-based. And we created kind of a longer form document which drew from all the evidence. And with that, I'll pass over to Farangiz.
Great, thank you. Yes, so as Joe mentioned, we started with the strategic document just because that was where most of our sort of research was based, right? So where we looked into the academic literature that was already written on this topic, as well as existing documents and guidance documents and toolkits that have been developed in the past couple of years. So we intended to do something to add to the already existing pool of literature, and hopefully adding something that would be useful for people who are thinking of developing short-form interventions in the future. Now, the document was developed in a way that we wanted to use it to engage and partner with tech companies, which would maybe then lead them to be interested in sharing the guidance document that Joe's going to speak about a little bit later, with their creators. And as well as, of course, justifying the shorter document, the guidance document, the strategic logic document offers a more general overview of the existing challenges in the field, as well as that practitioners face, which is, for instance, how difficult it is to persuade someone, let alone change someone's viewpoint. Now, it also discusses methods on monitoring, measurement, and evaluation, how important it is, of course, highlighting the ways that tech companies could actually assess whether the campaigns that are being created, how effective they are on the ground. And finally, what we've also done is, as I mentioned, we've drawn from the existing guidance documents and toolkits. And what we did is we highlighted some of the key elements that we found in all of these documents, as well as some of the different approaches that they were recommending to make these campaigns more effective. So can you press the next slide, please? So in the annex of the longer strategic document, what we have is this comparison table. Just to note that the toolkits and the guidance document that we've selected were just the ones that were most suitable for us and for what we were trying to achieve. This does not mean that there aren't any other ones. There are plenty of them out there. So this was just for the sake of our own paper. And we wanted to basically just highlight some of the comparison of different key elements with the summary of the different counter-narrative constructions, and it actually goes on to talk about the challenges as well as ways forward. So yeah, and Joe, over to you for the...
Fantastic. So from that kind of general overview, that kind of longer document in which we all kind of just poured our brains in and thought, what are the main messages backed up by usually empirical evidence, as well as the challenges that come with it. And then just try and distill that into something which is very easily digestible. Kind of, I think in our minds, something that a 16-year-old who's creating this kind of thing could read and understand very easily if they want. 6 to 8 pages or so, written in very non-technical language, that really just offers a set of suggestions that may be useful. And I think one of the really key points is that we did not want to be overly prescriptive here. The way that we saw it is that these people have built up organic audiences doing what they do, and we didn't want to say, do this, don't do that, basically give them a big finger wagging, but rather just try and offer them some of the lessons that we've kind of painfully learned by doing this sort of thing in the field for a number of years before. So I'll give it kind of only a little taste of what's in here, mostly because the whole point of it is that it's not really going to be hugely earth-shattering to anyone in this room if you're working within the PCV space, but rather it's trying to distill kind of some relatively simple messages. But to give a bit of a flavour, we kind of highlight really the importance of just trying to keep things local, keep people talking to their audience about the sorts of things that they understand and audiences that they are engaging with. Remaining authentic, and again, that's partially why we didn't want to be hugely prescriptive with what we were telling them to say, because they've built a bond with their audience, and as everyone in this room knows, being a credible messenger is one of the biggest benefits you can have, one of the biggest fights you can already have won. Again, we talked a lot about a specific focus on storytelling as well. These kind of short-form videos are really interesting in terms of thinking about how to kind of deconstruct them, how they're built up, and they're often telling pretty kind of clever and concise stories within, depending on the format, either 30 seconds, 90 seconds, or something like that. But really importantly, a set of considerations, like the fact that a huge number of people are clicking on something else after about 5 seconds. So like bringing in your hook as quickly as possible, how to try and make the most of the kind of hashtags on these kind of platforms. So these really are the sorts of things that we've put in the guidance. So just to briefly finish up, we're kind of at the point where we're just typesetting the thing. So we're going to be publishing it online in the next kind of month or so. So I think the next step after that is really just trying to find as many ways as possible, putting this document in the hands of as many content creators as possible. Like I said, we're certainly happy to talk to tech companies and things like that who have these kind of schemes and have formalized ways of talking to these people. But we also know that there's a huge number of people that are not necessarily on these schemes. So I think the next real big challenge will just be trying to find as many of these people as systematically as possible and seeing if they're interested in working on this together. And as I mentioned, yeah, we're very interested in engaging tech companies. So if you work for a tech company, we are more than happy to talk to you and provide this to you for nothing. And that's it. Thank you very much.